Slava Isus Christus, Slava Navika, glory be to Jesus Christ, glory be forever. Hope everyone is doing well and wherever they're listening from this podcast. This is Father Basil Malovany again. So, it was about 3 years ago now that I took a trip to Rome with some people from the church I was in before in Regina. And it was a wonderful trip. I've never been overseas before. I never had ever been out of North America. And it was my first time in Europe, and we had some beautiful excursions to different places in Italy, and especially, of course, the churches in Rome and the Vatican, and we saw, everything that you could imagine see in Rome over those couple of weeks, and also went to other places, Assisi and Florence and Siena. I remember those are the places we went to. And just some of the memories I have about that, and I took, probably thousands of pictures, because that's the trip of a lifetime for me, to go to this place of where, where the Pope lives and so many beautiful churches there. And I was just thinking about that, reflecting upon that recently. It's been 3 years since I've been there. And how did Rome and Italy become so Christian? How did it become so Catholic? And is the faith of those people any different than the faith of us who live in Canada, live in other parts of the world? So that was kind of the thinking I was doing lately. Is Rome just because this is where the Bishop of Rome became what we know as the Pope now? Is that make their country more Catholic than any other country in the world? Well, that's an interesting thought to think about. And one of the things that really intrigued me when my visit to Rome was the catacombs, where they buried the first Christians. And, these catacombs go for underground for miles and miles and miles. It's a huge underground area where they buried these Christians. Many of them were martyrs. Many of them, there's thousands and thousands of basically underground graves. And I had the opportunity to see that. And, of course, I also saw where, St. Peter and St. Paul were martyred. And, of course, there's churches, St. Peter's, Basilica, obviously, in Rome, is the place where St. Peter was martyred, and then there's a church where St. Paul was martyred as well. And it's really about their sacrifice. These early Christians in Rome, I think Christianity became so popular in Rome and other places like that because of martyrdom, because of their sacrificing for the faith. And of course, we could talk as Ukrainians, it's the same thing. When you go to Ukraine, I've never been to Ukraine, but hopefully one day I will go. And you can see the same thing, the beautiful churches there, and all the martyrs that the churches were built upon. I have said this before many times. Ukraine was built on the Ukrainian Catholic Church was built on the blood of martyrs. You know, so many people died for the faith, and even dying even today. You know, as we know, there's a war going on. There's a war going on in Ukraine, and there's martyrs dying every day. You know, for the faith. And so I think, you know, when you look at here in North America now, and especially we live in Canada, where our faith is waning, you know, our Catholic faith is very much on the decline. Is it because we are too spoiled? Is it because we are just not, we don't have the same hardships that people in other countries have? It seems like the more hardships you have, the more you're going to turn to God, you know? And it's just, we don't want war to happen anywhere. Of course we want peace in the world. We want everyone to be able to live freely and to live peacefully. But it seems like whenever there is violence and war, that's when people, the martyrs, bring people to Christ, bring people to the church, you know? And it's very interesting to think about that. How the churches were built on the blood of martyrs in Rome, in Italy, in many places in Italy where these churches are hundreds or even, you know, almost 2,000 years old, some of them, and in Ukraine, of course, as well. And I'm not just talking about those countries. There's many other countries in the world where the Christians, the Catholics, were martyred for the faith. You know, so I've talked about martyrdom in the past in one of my podcasts, but you know, this just thinking about that again, and is our faith as strong as the faith of martyrs? Is our faith today in Canada the same quality, or you know, the same amount of faith that we have as someone who is, you know, fighting in a war, whose churches are being destroyed, whose churches are being, you know, pulverized right now as it's happening in Ukraine? I don't know what the answer really is. You know, I'm not here to give answers to anyone. I'm here to say what is the reality. And the reality is, when we live in a country that we have so many freedoms and we don't have any attacks on our church as other countries have, we seem just to be losing our faith. We seem to be losing our understanding of who God is and what God wants from us every day of our lives. You know, we make excuses every single time about why we are not learning our faith, why we are not attending church services. You know, the last 2 years, the excuse was COVID. And then, you know, the society gives us excuses. We're too busy. We're too young. We're too old. We have children, activities to do. We have family to look after. We have, you know, our jobs take our time. Our activities take our time. Does God really want to hear those excuses anymore? Does God really see those excuses when there's Christians and Catholics around the world dying? You know, and they would love to have our freedom. They would love to have our freedom to worship every day of our lives. So it's just something to think about, something to reflect upon. You know, when I walked through the streets of Rome and saw all those old churches that have lasted for hundreds of years. And, what did it take to build those churches? How many martyrs died to build those churches? All in the Roman persecutions in the first 3 or 4 centuries of Christianity. There were so many Roman persecutions, and the emperors would persecute Christians like crazy and put them in the Colosseum, which was another very interesting thing I saw. The Colosseum was the place where they had these basically theatrical antics where they would have gladiators fight each other, and then they would put Christians in there who would have to fight wild animals, and the wild animals would tear these Christians to pieces. This is how Christians died. This is how Christians were martyred in back in the day. And it's just amazing to think about why certain places of the world have their have the churches and the faith that maybe we don't have here anymore. We don't have that faith that those people that were persecuted have. And I'm not saying that I want persecution to come upon anyone. I that's not my certainly don't want us to have a war. Certainly don't want us to be, jailed and imprisoned because of our faith. But I'm just saying, if it happens, if that ever happens, if there's ever a war where we live, if there's ever persecution against Christians, would that make our faith stronger? How would that affect our faith? How would that affect the way that we live? Something to think about. So again, pray for all the martyrs of the world who died for our church, who died for our faith. Especially now in Ukraine, that there's martyrs happening every day who are dying every day during this war. And, remember those ancient Roman martyrs, because that's how the faith spread, through our example, saying, I will die for the faith. I will give up every single thing in this world to serve God. How many of us today in Canada think like that anymore? How many of us would actually give up our very lives in order to serve God? Something to think about. God bless you. Have a good night.